Thank you for joining the Hudson 7 Drinking Water Council's monthly meeting. Today is Thursday, March the 18th. My name is Rebecca Martin. I am the Director of the Community Partnerships Program at Riverkeeper and acting coordinator as a non-voting member and co-organizer with the Hudson 7 Secretary and Town of Hyde Park Deputy Supervisor, Neil Krupnick, for tonight's Hudson 7 virtual meeting. Before we begin, we would like to go over a few meeting guidelines and abbreviated procedures. The procedures are available in full on the Hudson 7's meeting page on their website at www.hudson7.org. The Hudson 7's meetings are recorded and streamed live on their YouTube channel page. A link to their page can be found on the meeting page of their website. The public is advised to subscribe to this channel to receive notifications when meetings begin. Both video and written transcriptions will be made available to the public on the Hudson 7's website at a later date. And if a member of the public would like to participate during the public comment section of our Zoom meetings, audio or video, pre-registration is required. Written comments may be submitted to be read on record as well. For more detailed information on how to pre-register and submit public comments, please visit the meeting page of the Hudson 7 website. Hudson 7 council members, please control your own mute button. Good practice would be to mute yourself if you are not speaking to avoid background noise and feedback. If a Hudson 7 member wishes to speak, raise your hand. And the chairperson, and in this case tonight, the secretary, will call on you to speak. Before you speak, please state your name and your municipality for any audio listeners. Lastly, at tonight's meeting, we have in attendance the Hudson 7 Secretary, Town of Hyde Park Deputy Supervisor, Neil Krupnick. Hudson 7 voting members, the City of Poughkeepsie, City and Town of Poughkeepsie Water Plant Operator and Technical Advisor, Randy Altstadt. The new Town of Esopus Supervisor, Jared Gersh. Welcome, Jared.
Thank you.
The Town of Esopus Alternate, Shannon Harris.
Here.
The Town of Rhinebeck Supervisor, Elizabeth Spinzia. Great. Hudson 7 non-voting council members. Dan Shapley, the co-director of the Science and Patrol Program of Riverkeeper. Hudson 7 technical advisors, Pal Malmrose of Engineering, and Emily Swenson of Land Use. Okay, I'm just checking through to make sure have I missed anyone on the Hudson 7? Okay, great. We also have on the line Brad Barkley, who is from the Dutchess County Planning Department, representing the liaison to Dutchess County on the Hudson 7. Welcome, Brad.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Neil, we have a quorum. And on behalf of the Hudson 7, I now turn the floor over to the Secretary of the Hudson 7, who's covering this evening for Chairman Gary Bassett, Neil Krupnick.
Thanks, Rebecca. Great job as always. Welcome, everyone. We've got a lot to do tonight, and I have a firm out at 6:30, so hopefully we can move things along. Can we get a motion to approve last month's minutes? A motion from Randy. Do we have a second? Second from Shannon. All those in favor?
I have one question. On section C, the Esopus Creek, item number I, line 3, it reads 600,000 million gallons a day. It should be 600 million gallons a day.
So we can make that clarification of the minutes and vote to approve with that clarification. Neil, is that okay?
Yeah. All those in favor,
Paul?
please raise your hand. All those in favor? And I guess we actually don't have a quorum for the minutes, right? Because Jared can't vote.
Shannon can.
So don't we need 4?
We have 4. We have you, we have Randy.
We do, math,
Wait, but Shannon's an alternate.
right? But so she can't vote.
She doesn't count towards a quorum because this
Right.
supervisor of Esopus is here.
So we will approve the minutes with the change at next month's meeting. Can we do that?
We,
Well, why can't Jared vote?
Because he was not at last month's meeting. You can't vote on minutes to a meeting that you were not attending. That you do
well,
not
yes,
attend.
you can vote on, and you can. According to Robert's rules.
Or in that case, you can allow the alternative to vote.
Right.
Are we talking about a quorum or the vote? I'm sorry for speaking out of order. I'm confused.
So I think technically the town of Esopus gets a vote. So maybe Shannon can just tell Jared that the minutes are fine, and then the town of Esopus can vote in favor of the minutes.
There you go. Jared, you good with that?
All right, so I'll vote in favor of the minute approval.
Okay. The minutes pass.
Thank you.
Do we have a quorum?
We do.
1, 2, 4.
4, 7.
Yes. Okay. So I'm sorry.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Appreciate the detail. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Elizabeth, you can speak out of order anytime.
It's my habit.
There you go.
Sorry. It's a bad one.
Next on the agenda, we have communications. Rebecca, what do we have?
So this month, the Hudson 7 have received quite a few communications. The first was a communication from Alex Dean, who's the confidential assistant in the town of Esopus, to share the news that Shannon Harris is stepping down as supervisor as of March the 5th, and that Jared Gersh is taking her place, and she would serve as deputy supervisor and remain on the Hudson 7 as Esopus, as the Esopus contact. Shannon, is that, and Jared, is that correct that you're the deputy supervisor? Is that how it should be noted in the new bylaws, or just alternate?
That's correct. She is the deputy supervisor, and she can be the point of contact for Esopus for the Hudson 7.
Does the town of Esopus need to pass a new resolution, Shannon, as we did before, to add Don Kiernan as a you're still the point person, but with the title change, or is it fine as it is for Esopus?
Jared, what would you like to do? Would you like me to be the primary point of contact and you as the secondary, or me as the primary and Don Kiernan as the secondary?
We can run Don as a secondary at this point, since he's been with it from the start, and do that. I don't think there's a resolution necessary as far as the town's concerned.
Okay, great. You had done one, but it seems like since the point of contacts are the same, it's just a slight title change for Shannon. That seems fine, but I leave that up to you.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Shannon, thanks for sticking with the Hudson 7.
Thank you. Thanks.
Mary C. Kremble of the Citizen Science Program at Bard had reached out to Gary regarding the Rhinebeck 2019 Water Quality Report. There was a risk and resilience assessment communication regarding discussion among water plant operators from Tig and Bond and Hudson 7 technical advisors. Dan, is this a moment where there's anything to add to this?
I think we have on the agenda later for a fuller discussion of collaboration, but maybe if we could just move F in this communications, the Daily Freeman articles, they're kind of related to this. in a way, dealing with, and maybe just give Shannon and Jared a moment. It seems that they, SOPAS, took a step to put cameras in at their water treatment plant in order to monitor for shipping traffic that might be anchoring out of turn, out of the places they're supposed to, and in vicinity of the intakes, which seemed like an important step that others may already have taken or may want to take. So I don't know if Shannon or Jared, you want to say anything about that effort?
I'm just checking out the agenda here. Yeah, the board did pass authorization for an outward-facing camera following last month's incident with the proximity to the water intake valve. There's some discussion and maybe perhaps confusion by the Town of Esopus Water and Sewer Board about exactly what that camera was meant to do. And I don't think they understand that there are other treatment plants. I believe Randy may be one in Poughkeepsie that do have outward facing cameras monitoring the water intake valve, which is never marked on a map due to security reasons, and which I think we had discussed in tabletop discussions with the Coast Guard, a resilience and I would say risk protocol for scenario planning in the future that involves outward facing cameras to monitor potential threats, contaminations, oil spills, barges that venture too close to intake valves and other types of activity on the water, which would make it important to capture vessel numbers and so forth. So I believe the Esopus Town Board understood that. There just may be a question of explaining to the Water and Sewer Board that may have been confused in Esopus about the purpose of these cameras and the importance of them in intercommunication between the water treatment plants, the Coast Guard, around potential risks to source water.
If I could add quickly, it was approved, as Shannon said, and then the Water and Sewer Board, like she was explaining, I don't think they were on the same page as for the use of the video. So at this point, I talked to our security firm that was doing the install, and everything is mocked up to take care of the plant and try to get some of the river, but we have channels to where we can then mount more as needed. So I think just a little more communication between our Water and Sewer Board and myself and Shannon to let them know about, the Hudson 7 and other protocols to then move into that install. So everything's approved, the money's there. We just need a little more communication. That way there's no back and forth between the boards and the water superintendent. And I think at that point, we'll be moving on to there. So everything will be mocked up to expand.
Great. Okay, Rebecca?
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, Jared. So there's a public hearing on March the 31st on Dan Scammer, the Dan Scammer proposal that came in. The Dutchess County Historical Society shared a showing of a documentary called Our Epic Eternal Struggle to Tame Poughkeepsie's Water. It's a documentary. The link is in the agenda. The Daily Freeman article that we just reviewed.
You should just say that Randy was the star of the show in that Dutchess County Historical Society program. I couldn't stay for the whole thing. I had to hop to another meeting, but it was really interesting.
It looks like there's a link to the documentary now. I have to go back and look, but we'll try to get a copy of it to share if you missed it. Put it up on the website. Thanks, Randy. And finally, a request for follow-up and interviews with Hudson 7 members by Susie Ross, who joined the Hudson 7 a few months ago and is here tonight to speak to the Hudson 7 during public comment. Any questions on communications?
Just Rebecca, is there information on our website about the dance camera public hearing and how people can participate?
There isn't, but we'll put up the notice for sure.
Great.
Happy to do that.
Any other comment? No? Okay, so let's move to public comment. And Susie, are you here?
Yeah. Can you see me? Can you hear me? More important that you hear me.
Now we can see you, yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Great. But you can hear me.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. I'm going to make Randy a star maybe again if he allows me to. I wanted to circle back. I met with with some of you anyway, in October of 2020. And I presented the focus of my thesis work to you, which is about potable water solution options for the Hudson 7. So I am now at a stage where I'd like to interview relevant stakeholders, which includes members of the Hudson 7 and any other parties you may suggest. And as part of my research, I'm conducting a case study on at least one of the Hudson 7 communities, which, as I had mentioned earlier, is going to be on Poughkeepsie. And with time permitting for both interviewing and response, I'll hopefully be able to do more. Beyond some of the typical characteristics of a case study, I'm going to be inquiring about information in any present contingency plans in terms of solutions that are considered or may have been considered. Of note is that I'm well aware that a lot of contingency plans are are kept pretty private to some degree for security reasons. So that is something I'm factoring in here in terms of permissions and how that information will be used. I'll also inquire about other solutions that may meet your needs, both from a supply and a distribution perspective. I'll ask about potential threats to your drinking water supply, including climate change factors. And I'll also be asking about thoughts on municipal water use. So I am required to provide consent forms, which are intended to protect participants, and explains that you have the right to review, comment on, and or withdraw information prior to a thesis research paper submission. I should note too that the interview will be recorded, either audio or audio video based on the participants' preferences. And that's just so that I can transcribe the interview for reference. And those recordings will ultimately be destroyed after I hand in my thesis. If there is ever a point during the interview, and I'm saying all of this because I'd love to interview all of you. I realize time is not always that could in fact be an issue for some of you. But I'm mentioning all of this because as part of the thesis work and BARD's internal review board, they tried to protect participants from saying things that necessarily that could affect security issues or their positions. But it's important that I mentioned all of this because if anybody is willing to speak with me and allow me to interview, I just want to make sure that you realize that we realize how important your positions are and the things that you may be sharing. So if I may have the opportunity to speak with any of you or about your water treatment plants, Randy has spent a little bit of time with me, actually a lot of time with me, but I'll need to.
I'm sorry, I just want to say we have to wrap up. We have 3 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. So anyway, the expectation with this interview is that it would be about an hour. It could be less in some cases, but it would be about an hour.
So Susie, would you like us to send your email around to the council for anyone who's interested and can reach out to you directly? Is that a good pathway for you?
That would be great. Yes, that would be great.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Susie. And we have John Lipscomb from Riverkeeper. John, you are muted. There you go.
Yep, thank you. So I just wanted to update. First of all, it's nice to see everyone. I just wanted to update you. It's in regards to the camera that Esopus is putting up to monitor barge traffic. I had another report which I haven't shared with you. You'll get a share tomorrow. I got badly behind when I was working on the boat in Maryland, but we had another incident of a vessel anchoring off of Esopus. And so I've just sent that to the Commander Singletary, who's the Coast Guard contact point. I will forward you all, Hudson 7, the report and the response. So it's just a point of information. I do think, however, that the initial report from Shannon back on February 10, when the Coast Guard responded by sending a marine safety information bulletin regarding anchoring outside of designated anchorages. It was originally circulated in 2015, before that whole anchorage fight, before the PAWSA, which you recall, the Port and Waterway Safety Assessment. They said they were going to resend that around. My guess is that they did, because since the report we got from Chad Gomes in about a week and a half ago from Esopus, there's been nothing else. So I'm optimistic that the message has gotten through. And again, I will share the report and the response with you all when I get the response tomorrow. I sent it to the commander just after 5, so I think he clocked out. But anyway, I think we have good progress. I'm about to respond to Shannon and others on a discussion that they've requested on how to report vessels. And I'm proposing I finally caught up. I apologize. I was inundated with deadlines. I'm eager to talk to you all about it. And we've come up with a protocol for making sure that our reports are accurate and that we don't cry wolf and thereby reduce our authority.
Great. Thanks, John. Do you have a follow-up, Shannon? Did your hand?
Just briefly, I did observe 2 more overnight vessels parked outside north of the water treatment plant in the Port Ewan vicinity. I don't have video and capability yet to capture those vessels or that activity, but I do want to report that I did observe this occur again twice. So yeah. Hopefully soon when we get the cameras, we'll be able to fully observe that and incorporate it into the policy that would then be reported up if it's deemed to be in violation.
Right,
Yeah,
and
so that's.
Oh, shoot.
John, you're muted.
My report of therefore is not really called for. I'm sorry to say. It would be great if in Esopus we have in Rhinecliff, we have good spotters that are there with really good cameras. It would be great if whenever you see something, Shannon, since you live on the water, if you're not available, if you can send someone out with just a phone to get a photo. That whole area, obviously you guys are critically concerned about vessels anchoring near the intake, but that whole area is not an authorized anchorage. And so I would like us as a community to be reporting all vessels that anchor north of Hyde Park because they're not supposed to be there. And the more complete that list is, the better it'll be. So if you can, I don't want to put all this on you, Shannon, but have yourself some some delegates that you can send out with a phone. And then per our discussion on how to report them, they'll send them to me, I believe. I think that's the way to do it, because otherwise, and I can filter it and make sure that we're, sometimes people report a vessel that's underway. We want to make sure they're anchored. We want to make sure we get the details right so that we don't cry wolf. But I'm sorry to hear other vessels came, because I thought we were winning.
You can hear when they anchor.
No, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the key is to get me a documentation, a photo documentation. And then I'll run with it from there. And I think I've told you all this, but we talked to Congressman Maloney's staff. Congressman Maloney, as you know, put through that legislation that told the Coast Guard they must suspend any further official designation of anchorages in the Hudson. And it's indefinite. It would take an act of Congress and a signature from the president to undo that suspension. So Maloney's staff I talked to them, and they were very interested in hearing about anybody anchoring outside the designated anchorages. So you have the guy who sits on the Coast Guard Appropriations Committee, or chairs it perhaps, eager to hear from us about vessels not complying with the spirit of the legislation and defying the Coast Guard's authority. So give me those reports.
Thank you, John. So moving on, and thanks Susie and John for the public comments. Moving on, we have reports and actions on old business. For the Hudson River drinking water source issues, we have an open discussion on the Champlain Hudson Power Express. We had the meeting on February 25th with TDI. Rebecca, how do we want this open discussion to be structured? We're just looking for comments from members.
Yeah, well, I thought I would just, one moment. Just kind of share through what occurred so far, that we had our 225 meeting with TDI. The presentation and the Hudson Seven's concerns are up on the website under their meetings page, under your meetings page. And there was a question out by the council about legal representation for the Hudson Seven. That is a question. There was discussion on whether or not to form a committee to discuss. I don't know if the Hudson Seven wants to further comment on that. Maybe Emily and Paul and Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there were a couple emails that went around, and it seems like there's just a lot to sort of unpack from that discussion, from the feedback that we got from TDI. And Rebecca mentioned that our bylaws allow the council to form a committee to work on something, separately and bring recommendations back to the council. And that might be the path forward on this, because there's just so much information and not a lot of time in our monthly meetings.
Yeah, I agree with Emily, and I think we really have to talk about what our next steps are. And I'm just going to mention this for the committee's consideration. Number one is what we were thinking of writing a letter to the governor and the mayor. Last meeting, we thought about writing a letter to the county executives. I think we probably need to consider writing a letter to the Department of Public Service, because I feel like we're not getting any cooperation from TDI. And I just wanted to read one statement that Jean made during the meeting. The idea that we're going to relocate this project out of the Hudson River and onto the land that idea is not going to happen, okay? So there's no chance we're going to redo 10 years of what we've been working on in this project. all science, all evidence, everything we've done now to get to this 10 years later and ignore that 10 years and move on our cables out of the river is not going to happen. So basically, I feel that to pursue TDI any longer is not worth it, because they basically told us that they're not going to do anything and they're just going to talk to our operators. Gary and I feel that the operators are not qualified to talk to them, that they need to talk to us. They sort of think that the operators are something different than the Hudson 7. So I think I have never seen an organization like ours actually provide questions to the people that had to answer them, because you can obviously see that they staged a lot of those questions and never answered a lot of them.
Would the Hudson 7 like to vote on whether or not to start a committee on Chippy and then think through their appointments to the committee? How would you like to go about that for today?
I think we need to, since there is so much going on with this, and as Emily says, we don't have much time. But they do, TDI seems like they're ready to plow through. So, and then obviously a lot of this discussion needs to be offline, I would imagine. Randy?
I think that the big thing that's going on with them is, we talked about the modeling, and I asked them to comment on what Dr. Chance said, and they said, well, he didn't see the whole model. We'll get it to you, and they haven't done that. I think the only way we're going to have any impact on this is we can push them to revise the EIS, the environmental impact statement, because there's like they said, it's 10 years since they did the EIS, and they really didn't address the water utilities. And if we go to the DEC or the Public Service Commission, maybe we can get them to realize that they need to go for an update on an EIS, which might get it out of the river. That's the only way we're going to get out of the river.
I would like to suggest that when I think our committee can have voting and non-voting member participants, is that right? I would really like to see, at least one or two of the municipal officials be part of the committee, because I don't want us as technical advisors to be, kind of making, it wouldn't be making decisions, because the decisions will come back to the group, but I think it's important to have that perspective on the committee.
I second that. I think it's critical to have more water treatment plant operators like Randy on the committee advising, because each water plant is a little bit different than the other, and each has a slightly different process and circumstance. So I think that's really warranted, and I think it's warranted to take this discussion offline in a committee, because surely there will be some attorney-client conversations that will need to be had, and having those in a smaller forum would be useful, especially given certain statements as well from TDI that they are not carrying insurance. They would not at all be prepared from an insurance perspective should anything occur that was unplanned or unforeseen, and many other statements as well as lack of upfront information and any of the modeling or testing that we requested, and the outdated information that they're basing, and the fact that they didn't consider the water utilities at all when they were originally planning this, perhaps even under a different name 10 years ago. I think the company itself has evolved since the time they first filed for this project.
So Rebecca has very kindly sent me a message recommending that we have a motion to start a committee on Chippy and form the committee membership by email, and to include at least 2 voting members of the Hudson 7. Do we have someone to, Elizabeth, do we have a second? And Randy seconds it. Great. So.
All in favor?
Aye. Great. So we'll have to obviously work something out over email, and perhaps people who are interested should let Rebecca know. That might save some time.
a quick comment on that? It's Brad Barkley.
Yep.
I do think that the municipal representation on the committee is good. I think you're going to have to very strongly consider a two-prong approach where you continue down the information and the question asking path, because I think it's clear to move it out of the river, you're going to have to go to someone other than TDI, a more political path. So there really is, two approaches. I would hate to lose any opportunity to possibly get additional testing that we can force them to pay for up front. And to continue to advance that way, and only take a political path, because getting this out of the river is going to be very difficult. Thanks. Sorry.
No problem. It is going to be very difficult, sadly. Number 2, we have the Esopus Creek turbid discharges.
I think we have to talk about the legal representatives.
The Chippy committee will do that.
Yeah, we're going to figure that out.
Well, my question is, you have it under Chippy, but do we have to have this legal representative for both the Esopus and Chippy? That's what I would like to hear, what the members would say to that.
Yeah.
It's funny, Paul, when we were going back and forth on email on this, I thought it might make sense to have, someone representing on both issues. But now that just thinking about it in the moment, we know what the process is for the Esopus discharges. So I think participating in the public process is pretty straightforward, at least at this stage. Documenting the impacts as you are working on and getting that information into the DEC by the comment deadline in June, I think is pretty clear cut. Whereas the Chippy really needs the attorney because it's such a complicated process, and figuring out where to intersect and where to have influence is a lot more difficult. So I think it's at the very least much more urgent on the one on Chippy than on the Esopus, I believe.
I agree with that if the committee agrees with that.
I'd strongly agree with that. Utility laws and the PSC is a whole different ballgame.
So we don't need to vote on that, right? We can just agree to move on. That'd be great.
Great.
Comments for that are due on June 16th. And the resolution, did we say that all the municipalities should be drafting a resolution?
I just wanted to update the council to let everyone know that Riverkeeper does have a memorializing resolution that it's drafted for municipalities who are impacted. Are you seeing my screen and seeing a resolution here?
Yep.
Yes. Great. And we're working with communities to help them to do that, to have a unified voice. And the town of Poughkeepsie has passed the memorializing resolution. They did include a cover page that speaks to the drinking water, which is terrific. And then they just attached our memorializing resolution. I think we all know, we've done this before, that memorializing resolutions are a great educational tool. They help municipalities, town boards, city councils, trustees to understand the issue, to walk through it and discuss it, and the community as well to understand what's at stake. And so we would love for the Hudson 7 itself to consider memorializing resolution, and as well as all of the communities involved in the Hudson 7, if they'd like to take this back as well to discuss with their communities. So that's available to you.
Great. We'll be on board. So next on the agenda are updates for ongoing issues.
Dan, can I ask you a question? what was the purpose of the public hearing on March 3rd? Are they going to answer our questions or are they going to wait till June 16th?
I believe it all goes into both the testimony at the hearing and the comments that will go in June 16th go into the same bucket, and then they have to respond to them at a later date. And I don't know if there's a time limit. I don't think so. Emily is looking at me. Maybe she knows. But so anyway,
I don't know offhand, but I would expect it would not be right away.
Yeah, it'll be a while. So anyway, so I think it's the value of doing the testimony first, even though they all end up in the same place, is that it got out in the public record. A lot of people heard it. I heard a lot of reaction from people who were talking about your comments specifically, Paul, and saying how powerful they were and how it raised the issue of drinking water in the Hudson in a way it hadn't been before. So I think it was great to have done that. And then the more specific comments by June will just underline it and add depth to the points he made.
Are they going to have a second public hearing after when they get you don't know? Okay.
That was the second public hearing. The first one was in February. Whether or not there'll be a third, we don't know. But we will let you know as we know for sure.
Do we need another committee to address this issue, or is the Chippy committee going to do that?
I would say it would be valuable to have a work stream. I don't know if it needs to be a committee, but some central coordination. I know that Esopus had started to take turbidity readings that coincide with the dates of the releases. And I spoke to DEC officials off the record, and some of the important points that our group can raise about the turbidity levels at the intake valve are resonating excuse me, I meant the DEP, in the DEP already. So it would be very important to continue that process. I know that when we did our FOIL with the DEP, the town of Esopus did, requesting the past dates, what we wanted to go back in time to 10 years when they had that first initial controversial release 10 years ago of high turbid waters. The DEP wrote us back and said that they could not respond to our FOIL until after June. So we will not be able to obtain that information unless someone else in our group or outside of our group previously FOILed that information maybe 6 months ago and is ahead of the curve on the maximum time that DEP has to respond to the request for information.
I think Amanda Laval at the county level has a lot of that information, Shannon.
I hope so, because I did ask her for it. So maybe if you could ask her as well, that would be incredibly helpful, because we have records that go way, way back and could run the analysis and comparison. And I think that even builds the case further.
Totally agree. That's what I thought. I thought that's what Randy and I were going to do for the June 16th submittal.
Yes.
So
if you guys are going to be coordinating that, that would be great. I mean, I know that our water treatment plant operator was interested in participating in that, and we're ready to be right along by your side and running that analysis as to how it impacted us, because we are right in the line of fire, as are others.
Great. So it sounds like Paul, Randy, and Shannon are on this. Great. So I'm just wondering, and because we're really, time is moving along here. In the interest of time, Rebecca, if we just put up the updates for information, and if people have updates for us, they can let us know. I can put it up, actually.
I can update on a couple of these. Just the source water protection program. We've been waiting for the state's word. The word from the state is still soon. That's the only update. And then on PCBs, I sent an email, which some of you may have seen, but you'll recall when the Hudson 7 was at the press conference, I think in October 2019, to support Ulster and Dutchess County in filing a friend of the court brief on a case that New York State had brought against the EPA. That case was challenging the EPA's decision that General Electric had completed the PCB cleanup. GE just won that case, so so the decision just came down that didn't go in the direction we all would have wanted. But what I wanted everyone to know is there are two pathways for further cleanup of PCBs. One is for the EPA to order the remedial investigation of the entire river downstream of Troy, which has never been investigated, between New York City and Troy. And the other is for, in ongoing review of data, for the EPA to essentially say that the further cleanup is needed because health targets haven't been met, et cetera. So if the Hudson Seven's interested in a statement, I recommended that it could make a statement to the effect that EPA, the ball's in EPA's court, and those actions now need to be taken so that further cleanup can take place of the water supply. Thanks.
John, did you have an update on the spill prevention and response?
I could add that we've contacted the Coast Guard regarding the that many of you heard about. It was delayed because of COVID, and I believe we haven't got a firm date, but they're talking about it again this summer. And again, they're saying maybe August. It's a tabletop drill, and so it's not going to satisfy us at all. But it's a big step forward because it's the first exercise of its kind to happen north of New York Harbor. And from this, we will ask for a test, a spill drill that actually deploys equipment, et cetera. So more to follow, but that spill drill, which has been delayed, is now maybe in August.
It would be a good test of the resilience plans that I think Dan said were due just prior. So if each plant has a deadline to put together their emergency plan and update it, and we do the spill tabletop exercises in August, that will be an excellent test of the plans, if nothing else, and additional communication and coordination with the Coast Guard, which is always valuable.
Agreed, absolutely agreed. Every one of these is a step in the right direction.
I would just like to mention that what Shannon just said, the risk and resilience assessment is due. Randy's was supposed to be submitted at the end of December, and everyone else's except Lloyd is due on June 30th. These plans are going to take several months to do or whatever, and are extremely important. And 6 months after that, the emergency response plan has to be updated. So this is a critical item that I think only Asopus has done this so far in discussions with Don. I've sent out an email to all the operators and got no response. But for you guys to send out proposals, hire an engineer to do this, or do this on your own, you don't have much time. I tried to bring this up last time, but the discussions got too long. But this is really important. This is not, you're not going to get a notice from the health department or DEC. This is a federal program, and you have to respond to EPA by June 30th. And this looks at all possibilities like your water source, your financials, all that information has to be evaluated in this risk assessment. So it's important that we do it. And I was thinking that this would be a great opportunity for us all to think about how we can help each other if we do have an emergency. So I don't know how you guys would like to go with this, but I'm really getting no reaction, but the due date, as I said, is June 30th.
So, Paul, what exactly do we need to do, or what can we do?
You have to evaluate all your assessment has to include things like natural hazards, violent acts, infrastructure, including your water sources, your electronic computers, your automated systems, the other item that I had on the agenda is cybersecurity. Although it's only touched minimally in this one, it's very important after we heard what happened down in Florida, where almost an entire water system was polluted. As you can see, I sent out the fact sheet about this, and it's up on the screen right now. There also talk about monitoring practices, your financial system, is your billing system adequate to handle all these resilient questions, your chemical storage and handling and operation and maintenance. So I'm talking to the guys in my firm, and they're really kind of concerned that if you haven't started it, it's going to be very hard for you guys to meet that date. So these studies usually cost somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000, but you could try to do it on your own too. So that's what's going on. Sorry to be so long, but I think this is an important subject.
No, it is, obviously. So I guess we should reach out to the other communities and make sure that they're on this, right? That they're moving forward. The ones who are not here represented. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So Paul, is this something that the operators would have heard from the health department as a requirement? Is that where the pathway, or where have they heard, or what agency have they heard from
I would say that they only probably heard this from New York AWWA. As I mentioned, this is a federal program. EPA probably should have sent them all a letter that have a service population of more than 3,000. And I think Lloyd is the only one that has less than 3,000 people in their service area.
One other question, you mentioned a lot of different systems that they each need to check, and most of those are specific to one plant or another, but the things they might collaborate on are around things like threat of an oil spill, threat of some vessel hitting an intake, things along those.
Somebody building a cable near their intake.
Like that, yeah. So it seems like the council might want to do two things. One, make sure you're communicating to your operators about the site-specific things, but then you could potentially take a vote, and I don't know, I guess, Paul, you'd be the only one in any position to help, but, to identify what those common issues are and whether there's one, the Hudson 7 could produce that section for each of the plants potentially. But right. I'm a little out on a limb here, Paul, because I haven't read the same guidance as you.
So Randy, do you know if you guys have prepared this?
I know we had big push to have our emergency plan updated by the end of the year, which we did do. I probably need to look more into this just to find out what extra I had to come up with, but we have done the emergency response plan.
And I would be more than happy to offer ours as an example to others, but I do fear that ours is woefully out of date. I know that we have had one and it was done professionally, but I do believe it's quite old now, and I'm not certain of recent efforts to update it. But I can check with our water superintendent.
Now, Shannon, I believe you're probably talking about the emergency response plan.
And that's the second thing. That's after this resilience plan?
No, the emergency response plan was supposed to be done that came out around after 9/11. And now
Right.
they're going to this resilient assessment. And then once you do that, then you're supposed to update your emergency response plan.
So then we've
And-
never done it before.
And Dan Valentine talked to Don, and he said that he was in pretty good shape. And
Great. If they have, then that's great. I just wasn't aware that that was part of the scope of the work that Ty and Bond provided for us when they analyzed our water infrastructure.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either, but I'll touch base to find out. And if we do have one that's in really good shape that would meet all the criteria of this new EPA demand, then I'd be more than happy to privately, confidentially share it with individual plants in need. But I need to consult with Don on that, and probably Jared as well.
Yeah. I guess Dan has also talked to Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Authority, and they hadn't done theirs either, but they never got back to us. So I don't know what they're doing, but they definitely have to do one of these plans. So for Hyde Park. Now I can have a person talk to us or make a presentation in April, but we're really cutting it close.
Dan, do you have a suggestion?
Well, it's more of a question for, I think, Randy and Paul, like what service can you offer, what work would you be able to do to help complete these plans for the 7, or at least the common portion of the plans? Is that something, Paul, you can do as an advisor, or something your firm would have to be hired to do? Or is it something Randy could do and then share with the others if it isn't already in Esopus's? Because I can imagine, even if Esopus's is old, with all we've learned just in the last couple of years, there's going to be new items you'll want on that risk assessment part of the plan.
Well, in what Shannon just said, I would assume that Don thought that he was complying because he did the emergency response plan like Randy's done. And that was started after, as I said, after 9/11. Our firm has done about a dozen of these, and we're working maybe on 5 or 6 right now. So, I don't want to promote Ty and Bond as a technical advisor, but somebody needs to start thinking about having their in-house staff do it, or hire a consultant to do it. What we're doing is we go out to the municipalities and have a workshop with them and discuss what they have to do, because obviously the operators know much more about the system than we would ever know. So we're just trying to put it together and organize their thoughts is what we're doing, and putting it down in a plan.
I need to look at it some more, but we may be able to come up with some kind of maybe a fill out the form kind of thing where we can start, you need to look and address through certain things. And if you go through it in a certain order, you'll be okay. So I need to spend some time on it. I really haven't. I let that slip.
We'll all be in touch with you guys, I'm sure.
Randy, can I make one quick suggestion? Paul and Randy, do you want to communicate and maybe devise a plan that you could put forward? I know time is short, so maybe through an email with the executive committee of the council, Gary and Jay and Neil, as a starting point, and then they can decide how to communicate from there. Does that sound like a good plan, just so we keep this moving?
Yeah, I need to dig into it more, and then I'll follow back with Paul to show him what I've come up with, and then we'll work together and see where we go from there.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. So in the interest of time, I think we should table what's left on the agenda to the next meeting, unless there's anybody that has anything else urgent that they'd like to bring up. I don't see any hands being raised. So with that, do we have a motion to close tonight's meeting? Elizabeth? Oh, John has something. Is it urgent, John?
I just want to say, I'm going to send you all a worst-case spill scenario that the Coast Guard did in 2016 for the area contingency plan. It may be a useful tool for these resiliency projects you're working on. Done.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Elizabeth, was that a motion or was that a question?
Motion.
Second.
And Shannon's the second. All those in favor? Okay. Thank you, everyone. All right. I hope I'm
Night.
okay. This was a little bit stressful.
You
Thanks,
did great,
everyone.
Neil.
Great.
You did great.
Great job, Neil.
Yeah.
Thank